Good morning and welcome to this week's Grow, where we gather to recharge, organize, and work here as members of MWAG. We are glad that you are joining us today as we revisit a popular Grow that we did a couple months ago with these MWAG women who went down to the Texas-Mexico border back, I think they went in April. Anyway, we did this Grow and then we didn't record it. And so we wanted to do it again because a lot of people were looking forward to it. And we're going, as part of the Hope Experiment, we are going to look at this trip in a really hopeful way and to give some information about the ways that of what they saw and their own experiences. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Miranda Cutler, who is our Shoulder to Shoulder Advocacy Director.
Thank you, Rachel. Let me get here we go. Yeah, like Rachel said, we went to the border in April, and we just really, we feel like as an immigration team and as an organization in general, there's a lot of talk about the border, and we wanted to see it for ourselves. But we just want to start with a disclaimer that we are not experts. We spent 4 days there, 2 full days, and then travel on either end. We arrived on a Thursday and stayed all day Friday, all day Saturday. They were really long days, lots of heat, but we tried to immerse ourselves in the border, and we just want to do this, share this with you as just bear our witnesses of what we saw, what we heard, and what we felt while we were there. We actually did a little bit more than we have here, but we're just going to focus on 4 places that we visited. And Alexa, Meredith, Anita, and Stacy are going to tell us about those 4 places. We'll start with Alexa.
Hi. So one of our first stops was the Port Isabel ICE detention facility. It's owned and operated by ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We met with, there's a photo. Sorry. We met with the deportation officers, with different staff, that everything from members of the ICE Health Service Corps. We met with volunteers that were there to spiritually uplift the non-citizens that were held at the facility. But it was an interesting experience that we'll get into in a second. And then I'll pass it on to the respite center.
Meredith, I'm sorry, I changed.
Yeah, no, that's okay. No, it's okay. And another place we visited while we were there is a Catholic Charities Rio Grande Valley Respite Center. And this is a center that's designed to serve people who have been processed by Customs and Border Patrol and have received a court date and then have been released. So this was a facility where families can stay as they awaited to travel to their next destination, usually be with their sponsor family. And this facility was just very basic. They had some clothes, not a lot of clothes. They provided some meals, and then mats for people to sleep on the floor. And then people, as quickly as they could, would move on via bus or flight, usually, to their next destination. And that was a really great place to be. We were able to help hand out supplies, medicine, clothing, diapers, and also help prepare some meals and play with kids while we were there.
Great. And then Anita, do you want to share about the Border Patrol?
Yeah, so you can see the photo there of the 3 agents who came and met with us. They came to our Airbnb. And so you can see in the photo below, they had these posters to kind of explain the processes and some of their work experience. And honestly, it was a little intimidating for me to have these agents with guns show up at our house. But it was just so fascinating to hear about their side of the experience, their daily work, the surveillance technology that they're involved in, and just their own humanity, you know, providing Happy Meals and things from their own money to people as they're transporting kids and, you know, trying to make these really difficult decisions.
Great. And then, sorry.
Our yes, we had
Stacy.
an experience in Reynosa, Mexico. It's just over the border from Hidalgo, Texas. A larger city next to that would be McAllen, Texas. We know there's a temple there, so if that helps people geographically. We went across with Sister Alma Ruth and her organization Practice Mercy. And we were really grateful to be guided by them and to experience that with other faith groups. That was really a special time for us to join with others who had a faith-based advocacy. So we went to the Rio Grande River Refugee Camp, and it sounds like an official place, but it's really literally in somebody's backyard, just behind their property line or their fence line. They've allowed these refugees who are waiting for an appointment through CBP One, which would be the Customs and Border Patrol app. And they're literally waiting, and every day they're checking in to try to get an appointment because there's no other way for them to present themselves at the port of entry with our customs. And so you can kind of see in the pictures that it is very, very basic. It is literally, you know, ropes with blankets and tarps, but the property owner has also helped the people have extension cords so that they can charge phones, because that is literally their lifeline to being able to present themselves at the U.S. Port of Entry. They also they just work well together. Everyone there has been there, you know, some up to 5+ months waiting for these appointments. They're helping each other. They are working together, cooking together. The friendship and camaraderie was really special to witness. And we had beautiful experiences meeting people that truly felt just like us, you know, the same phases of life as many of us. And so we felt very blessed that they welcomed us and shared their experience.
Yeah. And I would just add that we were there with another faith group. It was Presbyterian, I think, from the Dallas suburb in Dallas, and we all gathered, the people in the camp, and we prayed for them. And the pastor that was with that congregation passed around a little legal pad and asked everybody to write down the things that they would like us to pray for, and then he took that back to his congregation. So, and a lot of faith that we saw among these people. So we could talk forever about what we did and what we learned, but we just want to focus on 5 main lessons that we learned, and Meredith is going to go over those.
Yeah, so there were some main things that we want to focus on that we learned. And the first is there's a lot of discussion right now about the border being open and that we need to close the border. But actually, the border isn't open. And this is something even Customs and Border Patrol would talk about, is the border is not open. They're there. They're doing what they can to keep the border secure. Can you hear me okay? My headphones are acting up. Can you hear me, Miranda? Okay. So the border isn't open and we're not being invaded. And we need to remember that migrants are children of God and they're people who are looking for a better life. The second thing that we learned is that there are many people who are working hard to treat people with compassion. And that includes the people who are working at the ICE facility, the detention facility we toured. We met with people in their medical facility who really did genuinely care about the non-citizens who they treated. Border Patrol talked about picking up kids in the desert and taking them to McDonald's to get them a meal. Of course, with the respite center, so many volunteers. There's just a lot of really great people who are trying to make this experience better and who see the humanity in those who are migrating. Also, so number 3 is migration is not a new phenomenon and it doesn't need to be politicized. This has become a really hot button issue this political cycle, but it's something that has happened from the beginning. People have migrated and have moved to new places, have been called to do so for various reasons, and that's just a fact of life. Migration exists, and it doesn't need to be politicized. Another thing a refrain we commonly hear is that people need to get in line and do it the right way, come into the country the right way. However, there aren't actually many, if any, legal options for people to come into the country the right way. And so
create those options for them. Congress needs to do that still. So there's not a lot of options for migrants. Is there a number 5, Miranda? Awesome.
okay, and we have the power to build bridges and affect change. So as we help people understand that migrants are children of God, that the border's not open, that we need legislation to help people be able to come into the country in a secure way that benefits everyone, we have the power to build bridges and affect change, especially as we visit with our neighbors and our legislators.
Thank you, Meredith. So just to focus on that first lesson, that the border is not open or being invaded, and also that migrants are children of God, like you and me. And that seems obvious, but when you hear politicians and sometimes news outlets talking about invasions and people just streaming across the border, that is not the reality that we saw. But even if it is, we really felt as we met people and talked with them that these are people with real problems that don't want to leave their homes, but they feel forced for a myriad of reasons, but they need to be treated as children of God, even if we aren't able to let them into our country. And we saw a lot of things happening there to that end. So starting with the detention center, it's actually, we asked when we were actually there super long. They said it was the longest tour that we've ever done because we just asked so many questions. But when I asked if it was at capacity, they said it was only half full. Though they did say it has been full in the past, and they do a lot to, there are many detention centers at the border and actually in the interior parts of the nation, and they'll transfer people to make sure that they're not overwhelmed and they have space for everyone. And somebody already mentioned, I think there was this very sweet chaplain there who was working hard to meet the spiritual needs. And she said that she had just done a, oh shoot, I forget, was it the Muslim, not a Seder? Maybe they were planning to do a Seder for a Jewish.
Was it for Ramadan?
It was for Ramadan. I forget what they call the ending meal, but they were helping them practice Ramadan. And then at the respite center, it was really moving for us to be able to serve them and help them find little things like a Q-tip or some diaper ointment. Or I remember there were so many women who just they called it lycra. They just wanted some stretch pants to put on to be comfortable. And most of the kids had brand new pajamas, and they had just changed into their pajamas and they came out, and Stacy had brought toys and we were able to play with them, do puzzles, color, play some games. And it really brought home how these are just humans. They're not criminals. Their parents many of them had the tracking bracelets on their ankle, which are really difficult to deal with, but they had been released to go to their U.S. ties in the United States in various locations, and so they were stopping in the respite center to rest and get ready for their onward journey on buses or planes. But that was really impactful for us to meet them and see this really amazing operation that Sister Norma has created with a lot of public support. They say she's Pope's favorite nun because she has done so much good, but she's built a lot of bridges in her community and has support there, even in a state that isn't generally welcoming to migrants. And then the Border Patrol, it was really interesting because honestly, I think a lot of us felt like, oh, these are the bad guys. But they had come into our home. We'd invited the bad guys into our home and our home away from home. And but it was really interesting to listen to them. And we didn't agree with everything they said, but most everything we agreed on. And it was clear that, and actually two of those three were, I don't remember if they were migrants themselves or children of immigrants, but people, the one guy I think had come from another part of the United States, but those two people were local to the area um and really seemed to have a desire to help. And when we actually asked them about drug smuggling, they said that they actually hadn't had, it was a very small amount of fentanyl recently in that area, or maybe none. Um, at the time, most of it was coming through Arizona. But just, and we discussed, I don't know if we discussed that there, but we know from our own research that the vast majority of drug smuggling is being done by US citizens in vehicles. Like it doesn't make sense to have a migrant put it in their backpack and then get caught. And of course, the drugs will be confiscated versus hide it in a big, tractor trailer. So there's other ways that it's coming in. And then at the camp, most of the people that we met had been waiting for 6 months or more for a CBP1 appointment, and they wanted to go the right way. And we're waiting for that opportunity. And to hear their stories was really humbling and helped us realize that they are children of God, just like you and me. So now we'll move on to lesson number 2 by, get my notes, Anita.
All right, so lesson 2, there are many people working hard to treat people with compassion. And that was just evident everywhere we went, that people were going above and beyond their jobs and bringing their own efforts and so much charity into what they were doing. So at the detention center, we were really touched by how the guards there were treating all these people as fellow humans and, trying to find their interests and support that. So there's this library where they can play board games and learn English, but they found out the Russians wanted to play chess, so they got some chess games for them. And just the sort of thing that really surprised me was above and beyond a job. And then the respite center, even though that's well funded by local government, it is really run by volunteers and donations. And we made, I don't know how many 100 sandwiches, and we were just a drop in the bucket that week. And it was amazing to see everyone's efforts there. The Border Patrol, they also are trying hard beyond their job. I mentioned earlier, they stop and get kids Happy Meals. They follow their gut when they're stopping human traffickers. They're trying to meet these humanitarian needs along with the legal issues. And then in the camp, I think someone already mentioned that the owner there, it's just his property where he's letting people stay, and he had run electricity out there and porta potties and cisterns and was making this possible. And the woman, Alma, that was leading the Project Mercy we traveled with, she was dynamo, and just trying to raise funds and awareness and issues, and so much compassion and love being shown.
And Meredith, if you'll take number 3.
You bet. So a third lesson that we learned was that migration is not a new phenomenon and it does not need to be politicized. So one of the things that we learned at the detention center, it's a federally
one of the few federally owned detention centers in the country, and it has been in operation since 1950. So they've been working with non-citizens for almost 75 years at that particular facility. And the workers there have worked there for decades in many cases, despite changes in presidential administrations or political parties in power in Congress. So there's a lot of institutional memory there. So this is a phenomenon that has been ongoing and that they are very familiar with. At the Catholic Charities Respite Center, Sister Norma Pimentel, who was the director, she has been meeting the needs of migrants in the valley since 1980, and then became the director of the center in 2004. And she noted that the treatment and needs of migrants have not changed very much under different administrations and different political parties controlling Congress, that their needs have remained relatively stable and constant. And it's just that political parties have changed, or our attitude has changed toward them. With the Border Patrol, we were able to discuss how there will always be security and law enforcement needs at the border, since commerce and everyday life take place between two Mexican countries, and between Mexico and America. And it was interesting because as we crossed the border, we actually saw people who were commuting by foot from the United States back home to Mexico. And, there's a lot of traffic there. And so there's always going to be a need there, and there always has been, for some kind of economic exchange and ability to pass through. And then at the refugee camp, we were able to think about and learn about, especially before we crossed, the push factors and pull factors that contribute. You okay? Is everything okay? Miranda? Oh.
Yeah. Oh, did it go back?
Okay, yeah, it went back. Okay, I see it now.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. The economic push factors and pull factors. So a push factor is something that causes someone to want to migrate, and a pull factor is something that causes a person to want to go to a specific country or location. And those have existed for decades, if not longer. And there's causes that have unraveled in their home countries that have pushed them out or are pushing them out. And then there's also factors in the United States that are pulling them to the US. And it's just so important to remember. There's this great quote that's about how God is not overwhelmed by migration. It's been a fact of human existence, as we mentioned before, and we don't need to be overwhelmed by migration either.
Thanks, Meredith. Alexa, would you take lesson number 4?
Yes. So the fourth lesson is, without many legal pathways, migrants don't have many options. And that's something that I really wanted to learn about while we were at the border, is what it's like, what options do people have? Asylum is a right, like a person can present themselves at the border, and what does that look like? And so at the detention center, we met with 2 men. They were both Mexican, but they were I guess they lived across, their families were split by the border, right? So for both of them, either like their families lived full time in the US, and one of them lived in Mexico, or the other individual that they would kind of cross regularly. But their experience, they both had one was quite literally chased into the port of entry by the cartel, and the other was kidnapped. They were being held at Port Isabel for several months, and they didn't know if they would be able to rightfully claim asylum, because they had to provide proof. And for one of them, he had actually lived in the States before, but he was deported, and because of that, it was much more difficult for him to claim asylum. And so, when we think about him trying to reunite with his family, with his American citizen family, what options did he have? And with recent announcements by the Biden administration, yes, they were both married to US citizens, just kind of what is crazy. But with recent announcements and limits to asylum. We don't know the details of one of the gentleman's cases, but if you have any history of being deported or any kind of criminal history, which one of them admitted to, that the reason why he was deported as a teenager was because he got caught up with the wrong people. They most likely he was just sent back to Mexico. So it's a lot to take in, but we want to be hopeful. So those are the things that we need to consider, right? The burden on his family now that he has no opportunity to come to the States. So it's easy to just label someone as a criminal because they have some kind of history. But just speaking to him, and he admitted he's grown up, that he made mistakes in his youth that he's hoping wouldn't hang over him for the rest of his life. At the respite center, like was mentioned before, the families that are there have already presented themselves they've gone through the port of entry, or presented themselves to ICE. Some had the ankle monitors, and while they're at the respite center, they're trying to figure out where they're going to get to the next location, because they're assigned a specific court in let's say in New York City, Chicago, wherever, and they have to get there. Some had to report within a few days, even with limited resources. So either find a flight or a bus that will get you there within the next, I don't know, for most of them, I think it was almost within a week. With Border Patrol, speaking to them, we did hear about the changes, right? So historically, there was a lot of single Mexican men that were coming here to work, and sometimes would cross back and forth. But now it's a lot of families, and depending on the information they're getting, they might present themselves at a port of entry or wait through CBP-1. But Border Patrol they were finding a lot of families that did want to turn themselves in, but were coming between ports of entry. Then at the camp, so the legal way, many would say is the way of getting in line, is what has caused a lot of these camps. So we were at one of them, and there was several in Reynosa, right, which is just one port of entry. They're there for months. I think the average wait time was about 6 to 7 months, and they're waiting to get an appointment with CBP. And once their appointment comes up, we saw them as we crossed into Mexico. They're waiting there on the bridge at the port of entry. Some were just sleeping on the bridge. I think they're supposed to report there about 24 hours before their appointment time, so they just wait there. And there were many that were coming for, I guess, what we would consider economic reasons, right? Better jobs, healthcare. Some were there to reunite with family, and then some were also looking for safety. But their goal was to claim asylum, and that was the way. And so just for me, it was picturing myself with my children at one of these camps. What if you told me I had to wait there 6 to 7 months without the opportunity without being able to work, and just somehow finding food and hopefully with enough money to survive that time, which many by then had exhausted all their resources. It puts things into perspective.
Thank you, Alexa. really appreciate all those details and sharing your feelings about what it felt like and the compassion we felt. JC, if you'll go over this one.
Thank you. Lesson number 5 says we have power to build bridges and affect change. And one of the first things is to look for and share truth and nuance with others. And I think that might be the hardest thing is speaking with other people in your life, because all of these other things that we're going to mention, you talk to elected leaders, getting involved, those are with people you don't necessarily know. And having the conversations where you share truth, those are with people that you do know, and that can be a lot scarier. So I don't want to say this lightly, oh, just, start the conversations. It's really heavy, and people have a lot of feelings, and people have heard a lot of information that isn't truthful and is often backed by really harmful rhetoric. And we've seen that a lot in the, many years. And it's felt really heightened this year. The relationships with immigration and border policies, it's just felt really heightened, where we're feeling that misinformation. And so looking for that truth and sharing it with others in a peaceful way. So making sure that you're sharing those things on your own account, and maybe not attacking people, but really looking to be peace makers and peace builders when you have those conversations. So looking to MWIG for information, looking to organizations such as the National Immigration Forum that have people, really working hard on policies with lawmakers, with families that are actually experiencing these things. The next idea is to tell your elected officials you want compassionate reform. That can look like writing a letter to them. That could look like writing an email, making a phone call, writing an op-ed. We have an op-ed lab with MWIG where you can share, you can share the things that you've written, and they can help you work through that so that it's ready to be sent off to a publication. And I'd also add that there are often advocacy days that will help you to kind of jump in and get started, because they have a lot of informational meetings ahead, and then you get to sit in, and you may only get to share 30 seconds to a minute on your first one about what something means to you, or what you want to see in immigration reform, or whatever the actual case may be. Maybe it's about Afghan Adjustment Act and things like that. But that's a great place to start. And We Are All America actually extended their sign up date for their advocacy days in August through tomorrow. So I'm going to drop that. Well, I thought I was going to drop it in the chat, but I think I had the wrong thing. But I will drop it in the chat, and then I hope we can add that later to some other things. But We Are All America does great work advocating for refugees. And yeah, so I dropped that there. So if you want to sign up for something like that, it's a great place to start. That's the way that I started with my immigration advocacy in, I don't know, I guess 2021. I joined an advocacy days and was able to meet with a legislative assistant from my senator's office. And it was a great way to do that. Number 3, acknowledge and support the work of helpful people and organizations. So we mentioned some of the groups that we worked with just at the border where we were, and that was Catholic Charities Respite, their humanitarian center, that looking to them not just for information, but also you can see ways to support them if they have needs of certain items or things like that. Practice Mercy is the group that we were able to experience. We mentioned the refugee camp, but we also went on the Rio Grande with them and had some other meetings with them to really understand what was happening in that area and how we can support. And I'll add that there. Sister Alma Ruth is a wonderful missionary who does great work, and we're really grateful for the insight that she shared and the opportunities that she gave us when we went. And there's lots of other organizations right there at the border. Team Brownsville is in, obviously, Brownsville, Texas, but we'd be happy to share more. And obviously you can find those as well. But just, we don't want to limit that to just things at the border, but getting to know immigrants that are in your, and refugees that are in your communities is a beautiful way to get to build those bridges and to make relationships that can also foster change, because we know that with proximity, people can understand and have a greater love for others when they know someone often who is maybe facing these issues. And so that might look like a local refugee resettlement agency. It could, just be people that locally that are working to gather supplies for those same types of organizations. And I wanted to mention Welcome Corps. I know there are some people in MWEG who have worked really hard with Welcome Corps and other neighbor initiatives. And Miranda might be able to drop the link for one of those. But Welcome Corps right now has a really amazing initiative where they are providing the grant money, at least an organization is providing the grant money for up to 4 refugees in a family. And so oftentimes when you're trying to apply to do that, the funding can be a real, stumbling block for groups. So you can apply now and you don't have to have the funding up front, because there's grant money for up to 4 refugees, which I think is around $10,000 about that. So I'll drop that there. And that offer there, that matching grant, or that grant, is available through July 31st. So that's something you do within your own community. You form a welcome group. And so that's a beautiful way to share and to build those bridges. And then, I kind of shared some of these ideas, but just finding ways to connect and learning more, opening, up the ways that you're looking to serve, opening up your mind to reading and following different organizations and books that will help you understand more experiences that people are going through. But I would love to have more people drop any information on ways to connect with other people. We have wonderful advocacy groups that are doing really specific work. Alexa mentioned the possible changes for people who are undocumented that have families who are U.S. citizens. So there's groups like American Families United that are doing that great work to help them. So just looking for, there's so many ways. So if you have a suggestion or a group that you know of that is doing the work and would be a source of really great information for people and help you feel better connected, please share.
Thank you, Stacy. And Anita, if you want to take this one.
Yeah, so Norma Pimentel was the nun we worked with at the Catholic Charities. She was just such an amazing inspiration. So this quote is from her. She said, "Don't limit yourself from doing. Trust that this is God's work and the resources will come. We must let go of fear and encourage our elected leaders to see that we can both secure our borders and care for people."
Thank you. Yeah, and it was, if you look up Sister Norma Pimentel, she's famous. It was a really amazing experience for us to just be able to meet in that room with Jesus in the corner and talk about what it really looks like to be like him. She was really inspiring. So if you have any questions, we would love to address those. You can put those in the chat. We just have some links here. A lot of these things we've already talked about. Did I say, Alexa, were you going to cover these, or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, I can cover this one.
Okay, great.
So, well, Stacey mentioned some amazing resources, but here we have them listed out. If you like getting info right into your inbox, Immigration Forum has amazing newsletters. One of my favorites is their legislative summary of everything that's going on. It comes out on Fridays, but if you want to stay informed, it's a great way to keep up with everything that's going on in immigration. Also, if you're on Central, you can follow our advocacy team specifically by joining. If you go to the Welcome Immigrants and Refugees page, you can join, and that whatever we post that's specific to the space will come out in your feed. And Women of Welcome has really awesome Bible study guides. We sometimes use those as our spiritual thoughts for our meetings, but it's a nice way to look at immigration from a spiritual perspective. Other organizations we welcome: CWS, Highest, Global Refuge, World Relief. also have newsletters if you want to connect with them locally. That's even if you can't volunteer on the community sponsorship teams, sometimes they have opportunities. I know locally, like they'll have, they were looking for volunteers for World Refugee Day. They'll have different events, or maybe do like a school supply drive. So there's always ways to be involved, even if it's not long-term. There's a few some of the people that we met with while we were on our border trip, they're listed there. So Catholic Charities, the Respite Center, the Rio Grande Valley Border Patrol, and Practice Mercy is the group that we spoke of, that we crossed over into Mexico with. And then, of course, we would love for everyone to tell their elected officials that we want compassionate immigration reform. And Stacy shared the link for the advocacy days. We also recently joined efforts with the Let Asylum Seekers Work campaign, and a lot of the issues that asylum seekers have revolves around just not being able to work when they arrive. And so if they're given access to a work permit sooner, it would help everyone. And so if you'd like to learn more and send something to your elected officials, please visit that website. And as always, just talk to your representative, your senators, everyone, even locally. We want even local communities to be welcoming.
Thank you. And just a few more. This is probably overwhelming, but just pick and choose the things that will work for you. But I found this list recently that I thought was really helpful on USA Hello. So you can put in your address and it will show you organizations that are, the list is really designed for immigrants to use, but it's a great way for you to see where you can put your support locally, whether that be time or donations or just following them on social media and sharing the things that they're doing. That's a great way to get involved locally. Because I know for some, it's easy to see like, oh, they're doing things at the border. We talked about the things we saw there, but you might be surprised. Actually, when we were in the detention center, I was surprised to learn that there was a detention center 30 minutes from my home in Round Rock, Texas, which is very much central Texas. I used to live there and missed that opportunity to go and serve there, or at least learn about what was going on there. Stacy already mentioned the Welcome Corps. There's actually, I know in Utah, the state is helping to facilitate some of those Welcome Corps efforts. So you could look locally. Also, an MWEG member runs the organization Welcome NST. NST is Neighborhood Support Team. So they also are a great resource. But again, now's the time. I'm actually hoping to get my extended family to start a neighborhood support team with me before July 31st so that we can do that and take advantage of that extra funding this month. And also wanted to highlight that we're still working out the details, but at the end of this month, there will be an opportunity to watch the Across documentary, which is a really great docuseries. There's 4 about 45-minute episodes that were created by a filmmaker, Julie, I'm going to say M because I keep forgetting her complicated last name, but she used to work for Oprah and has created this really great documentary that really explores the intersection of faith and welcome. And Stacy and I were able to review it in Houston, and we are excited to share that with you and also have conversations about it. And we recommend you host or attend a living room conversation. There was one recently, and we hope to do some in the future, but you can also do one in your own community with your family and friends. I'll just drop that in the chat. And also wanted to share a book list that we have that has a bunch, and they keep publishing more and more books. So there's some new ones that are really great that aren't on this list, but that's our book list. So we're so glad that you all joined us today, and we feel very hopeful as we have these opportunities to share our experiences with others, and hope that you will also, I'm sure that those of you listening already are doing so much work on the ground, but we hope that being all here together that we feel even more empowered to get out and share truth and compassion with those around us, and change the feeling about immigration, because as we said, migration is a fact of life, and it's not something we need to be afraid of or get angry about, but we can do things to ensure that it's done in an orderly, compassionate way in our country, and we look forward to providing you with more ways to do that and talking about what that looks like in our country and in our communities. So thank you for all of you for joining us, and onward we go.
Yes, thank you, Miranda and Alexa and Stacy, Meredith, Anita, and Rachel Scholes, who wasn't here with us today, but was with you guys at the border. Thank you for doing the work and sharing your experiences with us. I will, when I drop the link to the recording in the Facebook discussion group, I will add the links, all of these for that, so they can go watch it with the YouTube recording. And also, we just want to, Miranda said we have a couple of events coming up. We'll put some details to the docuseries event and discussion, and then we have some other virtual events that we're going to share. So stay tuned. Here on the Grow, we'll make those announcements, and then in a couple weeks, we will also be talking about poll workers. If you have been a poll worker, please reach out to us, because we would love to have you share your experiences. Or if you are interested, join us on the Grow in a couple of weeks for a National Poll Worker Day. Then you can register to do that, and we'll share that information. So thank you to all of you for being here, and we'll see you guys next week.